And they're more privileged because they happen to be teachers. And people like me can speak on the strength of his ignorance, thinking that the formidable audience will pardon me if I make some omissions or I make some mistakes. Uh, Faiza, I'm grateful to you that you remembered me and you have invited me, given me this privilege to talk to these young boys and girls from different institutions of higher learning.
My pleasure.
Let me begin with two, three quotes actually. One is from Benjamin Franklin in 1781, when the uh, leaders of the United States of America were putting their constitution together. A meeting was held in the city of Philadelphia, and people were very anxious to know what kind of shape that country would take. So when that meeting came to a close, this tall and hefty fellow, he walked out of the meeting hall, and he was confronted by a lady onlooker. And she asked him, Benjamin, tell us, have we become a republic? Or we have become a monarchy or an oligarchy? So Benjamin replied, lady, you have become a republic provided you can keep it. She fired another question and she said, Benjamin, how can we keep it? And Benjamin again said, through education, education, and education, unquote, which highlights the sheer centrality of education and the power of education. One of the well-known chief executive officer of the Ford company, Lee Iacocca, he was once addressing the students in a convocation, and during his address he said, and I quote, in a rational society, most of us would prefer to be teachers and rest would settle for something else, unquote. The third important quote, which inspires us who happen to be in the teaching profession, is from Otto von Bismarck, the first Chancellor of Germany. When he took over as the first Chancellor of Germany, he said, and I quote, our generals have let us down, but I hope that our teachers would help us make a great Germany, unquote. And as lately as in 1986, when we brought out the national policy on education, about 37 years ago, we had also written in the policy, and I again quote from there, that no nation can rise above the level of its teachers, unquote. Now, government has created a teacher in every single living being. It is for us to recognize that and learn a great deal from those living creatures. Ladies and gentlemen, education is a subject that has continued to evolve and has extended its reach and coverage since the dawn of human history. In education, it is higher education which is extremely critical for social, economic, and technological advancements, and which is why the future of higher education is of paramount significance in every sense of the word. It is the higher education that provides us with critical tools to understand the social dynamics, which help us in designing interventions to ensure equity and taking steps towards creating a better society. Again, it is the higher education that develops and promotes technology, which permeates in all dimensions of human development. And in fact, it may not be an exaggeration if we say that no human pursuits have ever made any material progress until higher education was brought to bear upon them. But it is unfortunate that the development of higher education widely varies across different economies. If you look at the transition of higher education from one century to another century, and you look into the recorded history of 935 years of the university system, we find that the modern universities have evolved on the 11th century European model of universities. And that model continued for fairly a long period of time until we got the Humboldtian model of university system in late 19th and in late 18th and early 19th century, actually, which was based on self-governance, integration of education and research, academic freedom, and integration of science and arts as they are deeply intertwined. In fact, I would like to share one more quote from Humboldt about this integration, which we have recently talked about. Just a minute, excuse me.
I think sir will be back in a moment.
Just a minute. I was handling the kitchen, actually. My wife put the milk onto the burner and she went, and I think she's left.
I'm happy to hear that, sir. Your wife is keeping you
I was sitting in front of the kitchen, so I could see the. This is the duty which you all will have to perform, actually.
Of course.
Anyway.
I hope the teachers and parents are all listening.
कुकर का सीटी बंद करना पड़ता है सर.
And listen, she is going to find fault with me only. She would say कि आपकी आंखों के सामने था, फिर भी नहीं देखा आपने. Anyway, I was sharing this quote from Humboldt, which is very important, actually. And I quote: "Science and arts are not distinct entities, and to conceive them as distinct entities is not only false, but also dangerous." Unquote. This model continued for over 100 years. It was partially adopted by most of the universities as they continue to make distinction between science and arts. And even today, I mean, if we have the science department and the arts faculty across the street, we do not talk to each other. But now we can see alternate models. There are multiple models that are emerging in the 21st century. We talk about interdisciplinary model. We talk about market-oriented model. We talk about skilling model, reskilling model, online model, flipped classroom model, hybrid model. And recently, I also came across with another interesting model, which is known as linear on-the-fly testing model, LOFT model. I'm going to talk about it a little later. Though there is a growing concern about quality management in higher education across the globe, but there are very few countries that have been able to nurture quality with access and equity. In most economies, higher education is facing multiple crises. One is the crisis of identity, crisis of leadership, crisis of governance, crisis of resources, crisis of values. And these crises are intertwined with each other, actually. Of them, the most pertinent crisis is the crisis of quality, especially in the developing economies, wherein the emphasis is laid more on massification of higher education. Like we have set a goal for ourselves in the new education policy that by 2030, we would like to attain the gross enrollment ratio of 50. meaning thereby that from the present level of about 4 crore children enrolled in higher education, we would like to have close to 7.5 crore children enrolled in the sector of higher education. Now, this quality concern is so much that the governments in different parts of the world have set up agencies for quality assessment at the national level, at the provincial level. And both mandatory and voluntary types of assessment and accreditation system can be seen across the globe. There are various kinds of practices like subject assessment, academic audit, institutional accreditation. Now we are talking more of program accreditation, national and international ranking, which are in vogue. Some of these practices, of course, are quite comprehensive. And basically all of them, though with varying academic standards, aim at improving teaching and learning and assuring academic standards. But despite all that, in certain cases, quality reaches such a sorry pass that it requires replacement of the traditional approach with more collaborative approach. Insofar as quality is concerned, I would like to flag one issue for your kind consideration. If education is all about enlightening one's mind by an enlightened mind, then why do we talk about quality at all in education? And how can education be bereft of quality? In fact, there was a conference held in 2019 in China, wherein the world leaders tried to articulate quality, but they could not arrive at a universal definition of quality. But the concept of quality seeps into education when either of the two major stakeholders or both the stakeholders, I mean the teachers and the students, when they fail to attain educational aspirations and educational attainments. There are two major factors responsible for such failure. Of them, one relates to the teacher, obviously, and another relates to the student. While we have evolved some system of quality assurance, a lot more needs to be done on classroom processes, which remain a principal concern of quality. People ask very insightful questions about curricular provisions that we are offering, about the quality and qualification of the faculty that we have, students and community in terms of futuristic orientation, lifelong learning. People are also asking questions about employability of the children that we are churning out, their career development, global citizenship, leadership, and teamwork, for which, honestly speaking, we have very weak answers. Basically, these questions require rethinking about quality in higher education. Rethinking is also required about weeding out obsolescence in curricular provisions, switching over to innovative modes of delivery and innovative methods of assessment. Rethinking is also required as to how teachers can bring out the innate qualities of thoughts and practices. And quality, my dear friends, you know, is a social construct, meaning thereby that it will remain a moving target. And if it remains a moving target, it would continue to be a major challenge in most societies, and which is why rethinking of quality in higher education would always remain a major challenge. The future of higher education is very important for the progress of the humanity in general and nation states in particular. But we must not be complacent with our minuscule progress here and there. We must consistently test the limits of our knowledge. We must ask questions where the answers are not known. Traditional methods of teaching and learning which are in vogue must be continually revisited because the world is under perennial transformation. Universities must continually search for more efficient and effective modes of deliveries. There are some newer trends which are gaining momentum in higher education across the globe, and it may be worth reflecting upon some of them. Universities are often charged with churning out unemployable graduates. You would have come across with some of the reports brought out by the business houses and others. And some have gone that far that they have claimed that only 25% of the graduates from the Indian institutions of higher learning are employable, which is a reflection on all of us. I mean, some such reports may not be based on a very serious kind of study. Nevertheless, they have made those kinds of reflections. Universities are also charged for their indifferent and ambivalent attitudes towards addressing issues of contemporary and historical significance. Excuse me, Madam, दूध निकल गया सारा आपका. And don't tell me, okay? We find that there is a growing diversity both in terms of students and faculty across the campuses. Challenge of upskilling and reskilling in higher education is forcing universities to revisit their curricular provisions. People of my generation found it extremely difficult to adjust in early 80s and mid 80s when we were invaded by the technology. We were not able to handle the computers, though the computers were provided in the departments, but there were no takers actually. And if a computer was thrusted upon somebody, then he or she would like to get rid of that. Obsession for national and global rankings is also stressing the universities beyond limits. We are tired of answering questions as to why our institutions are not figuring in the first 10 or first 50 or first 100 in global ranking. An incremental increase in automation is laying greater focus on things like artificial intelligence in teaching and learning. And we see the relevance of artificial intelligence in our day-to-day life. You don't have to ask for the destinations or the routes from anybody. Today, it is the artificial intelligence which guides you. There is an increased collaboration between content specialists and instructional and media consultants, especially in regard to curricular reforms. Another dimension which is which is staring at us is about the greater emphasis on both formative and summative evaluation at the same time. Universities are expected to evaluate all aspects of development through different methods. We all know that universities have the dual responsibility to serve the local needs on the one hand and to address global concerns on the other. And it is entirely appropriate for most of the universities and most academics to remain focused mainly on teaching and applied service to society and the economy. But the modern societies are having greater expectations from the university system. They need more number of research-intensive universities because they are very critical for the future. But research-intensive universities cannot be a national institution of higher learning. It has to be a global institution of higher learning. Research-intensive universities are very expensive institutions. They are not driven by considerations other than the meritocracy. But one also finds a disturbing trend as most of the universities are generally neglecting research in humanities and social sciences, which are not only key to understanding culture and society, but also for providing social context of the exact sciences. And here comes the Humboldt's quote, which I had shared with you a little while ago. The cost of higher education is increasing in leaps and bounds, and public funding is not keeping pace with the growing enrollment. More and more number of children are coming from the lower middle class and middle class families, who find it extremely difficult to put up. They are not able to meet out the post-admission requirements. Now, all these trends have been accompanied by intense pressure on the entire higher education system. And it requires a greater commitment on the part of the federal government and also on the part of the provincial governments. Higher education must be put on the priority agenda, and greater resources need to be provided. We have been talking about it for a very long time. It was Kothari Commission in 1966 when the report was submitted to the government. The size of the higher education was not as big as it is today. Today we have more than 1,113 universities, 43,000 colleges, more than 15.5 lakh teachers, and the student enrollment is about 4.14 crore, with a gross enrollment ratio of about 27%. And at that time, I mean, the Kothari Commission had recommended that we must spend 6% of the GDP on education, of which 1.5% should be spent on higher education, 1.5% on secondary, and 3% on elementary education. But we have not been able to achieve that target, though we are reiterating it time and again through various commissions, through various committees. And even in the new National Education Policy 2020, we have again reiterated that we would be spending 6% of the GDP on education. I think the time has come when we need to revisit those figures, keeping in mind the present size, present shape of education in our country, and try to ascertain what quantum of resources would be required to support, I mean, close to 37 crore children who are enrolled in school education and college education and higher education. We are now witnessing emergence of alternate models of higher education. I mean, you would have come across with the various articles, lectures, wherein people are arguing for universities without walls. So universities without walls have been emerging as a new model in higher education. And some people have gone to the extent saying that we would not need the brick and mortar, we would not require the buildings insofar as the universities and colleges are concerned. Facilitation of learning with an emphasis on individualized instruction is gaining momentum now. People are talking about different kinds of learners and to providing them differential treatment. I mean, the students who are analytic learners, those who are common sense learners, those who are dynamic learners, they require differential treatment. So which is why, I mean, now the focus is laid on individualized instructions. That model is also gaining momentum. There is a growing popularity of learning by anyone from anywhere. And now there is an emphasis on replacement of conventional mode of teaching and learning with online mode of teaching and learning, with hybrid and flipped classroom mode of teaching and learning, through an increased use of multimedia systems and learning resource centers. And this has become a challenge for us as teachers, because if we are to ensure our relevance in our chosen field, I think we have to catch up with the invasion of the information and communication technology. There is a growing belief that to teach is to learn twice. And which is why the concept of this assistantship was promoted and is being promoted even now in the Western world. And therefore, peer teaching is also emerging as a new trend. There are also widespread and systematic use of student evaluation using multiple sources, multiple criteria, multiple techniques, which is also emerging as a new trend. The trends towards flexible delivery, engaging assessment, automation, and candidate-centric focus are pushing universities to move to a model where assessments are far more effective and where the candidate experience is both positive and engaging. Universities are also forced to use the feedback of their assessment and evaluation system for the purposes of revisiting the instructional material, for the purposes of improving the teaching learning strategies, and for the purposes of improving the academic attainments. Universities are gradually moving away from conventional examination hall testing to live remote testing using online proctoring, which brings us to another big change in the world of assessment. Another key trend has been the move towards the creation of much more engaging and effective assessment. Universities are no longer using only simple one-dimensional types of questions that attempt any 5 out of 10. I mean, there is an anecdote that when Professor C.V. Raman joined University of Calcutta, he was asked to set up the question paper, and he said that he would set only one question. And when he did that, the controller of examinations called upon him and he said, "Sir, the ordinance of the university does not allow us to do that. You will have to give 10 questions and you will have to provide the options in that." So Professor Raman found out via media, he said, "All right, if you cannot change the ordinance of the university, I do not want to burden you with that. But what I would do is I would write in the instructions that attempt any 5 questions out of 10 or attempt question number 7. So, I mean, these are very interesting examples from where we need to learn a great deal. Now, with the move to online, there is now a huge range of question types available, which help to make assessment much more immersive. Using a variety of question types gives greater insight into what people know and how they apply that knowledge in practice. I mean, most of the questions, if you carry out the analysis of the questions in majority of the disciplines, you would find that the questions require cognitive operation either at knowledge level or at the most at understanding or comprehension level. Very few questions go beyond the level to the level of application or beyond the level of application, which require cognitive operation at analysis or synthesis or evaluation level. Universities are moving. I was talking to you about that LOFT model, which is linear on the fly testing model. With this model, universities can set up question banks where each question can be associated with different tags, not merely based on the judgmental validity, but based on the known parameters, how a particular question has behaved on the floor of examination. I mean, when we know about the facility value of individual question, the discrimination value of individual question, and if it is a multiple choice type questions, then the effectiveness of each distractor that we have out of 4 options that we provide, wherein one happens to be the correct answer, which we call the key option. These texts might be learning outcomes, syllabus topic, difficulty ratings, job roles, and then automatic picking rules can be defined for each examination paper. This means that randomized papers can be generated for each candidate, and each test uses different questions, but they are equivalent in terms of what they are assessing. This is what for the first time was done by the Educational Testing Service Princeton, which was subsequently followed by another testing organization that is known as ACT, American College Testing Program. The big positive of this LOFT model is that papers are generated automatically. So once the examination bank has been set up, it is just a case of maintaining it as opposed to having to continually generate new examination papers. Let us also talk something about the trends in research. We all know that number of research universities has always been less, and it will continue to be so. If you look at the profile of our own universities, which are about 1,100 odd, we do not find more than 10% of the universities which we can put under the category of research intensive universities. In fact, in 2004, when the University Grants Commission had come up with a scheme of universities with potential for excellence, with a view to providing them additional financial assistance, we had identified only 5 universities at that time. And these 5 universities were the Jawaharlal Nehru University, the Central University of Hyderabad, Pune University, Jadavpur University, and Northeastern Hill University, NEHU, Shillong. Later on, we expanded the scheme over the years, and we could identify more than 25 universities with potential for excellence. The financial assistance was also raised initially from 75 crore to 100 crore to these institutions. But insofar as the research-intensive universities are concerned, modern societies need more and more research-intensive universities because they are very, very crucial to the future of the society. But that capacity can be developed only through long-term increased funding by the governments. If you look at the profile of the research universities globally, you will find that majority of them are publicly funded institutions of higher learning. There are only a handful of research-intensive universities which are private universities. One can find noticeable change in research trends. There is an emergence of modern disciplines, and with that now there is a continued focus on interdisciplinary teaching and research, as new knowledge lies at the intersections of different disciplines. If you look into the past 10 years Nobel Prize winners, you would find that most of the Nobel Prize winners are those who have been working in interdisciplinary domains of knowledge. There are some countries where research is driven in other publicly funded research institutions. We also had several stand-alone institutions like CCMB, Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, Hyderabad, and several, CSIR labs. Now they are merged with the CSIR Academy, which has become an institution of national importance. Some such institutions are collaborating with universities while others are not. In the era of massification, we all know pretty well that not all universities can be research focused. There are a very few research intensive universities, and world-class research universities will continue to remain a small minority. US has the largest number of research-intensive universities, which are about 300 in number, followed by the Russell Group in UK and Australian Group of 8 in Australia. Research, if you look into the global ranking of 2023, you will find that of the 10 top universities, 7 happen to be from the United States of America and 3 from the United Kingdom. And amongst the first 34 universities, among the first 100 universities, 34 universities are from United States of America alone. If you go deeper into it, you will find that about 90 odd Indian universities had participated in the global ranking of 2023, and of them, it was only the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, which found a place in the range of, 251 to 300. Rest of the universities were much below. Before we talk about the future of higher education or the future universities, I think the time has come when once again we have to look back to the University Education Commission and remind ourselves about the aims of university education. My dear friends, universities are the most enduring organizations in the history of the world. And the civilization depends upon what happens on the campuses of these institutions of higher learning. University is a meeting ground for young men and women, not only for preparing for life, but also to bring about social change. Universities have the responsibility to provide leadership in all domains of human endeavor, be it politics, administration, commerce, industry, for that matter, every other profession. Universities have to remove disparities between what nation needs and what they are offering. There was a time when we were invaded by the technological advancements in mid-80s. Because of the ambivalent attitudes of the university system, the government of India had to set up a different sets of institutions in the name of Indian Institute of Information Technology. Later on, the universities came forward and started offering the IT programs and allied programs. Universities have to promote liberal education which frees from the shackles of ignorance, prejudices, and unfounded beliefs. Universities must secure recognition and acceptance of the oneness of the world in its thinking. And universities must teach wider patriotism, which should have room for diversity. I mean, under Article 51A, which was inserted in 1976, we have one of the fundamental duties that we have to promote the composite culture of this country. Universal peace and harmony for the whole human race must be the core component of the curriculum of a university. And why I'm talking about this is, and why I'm requesting you to go back to the University Education Commission, is this, that the modern societies are looking for these kinds of values. Universities must develop social temper of democracy, which in turn should build and cement confidence in one another. When we start trusting each other, when we start respecting each other, when we treat every individual with dignity. This is, I mean, the primary duty of the university is to maintain the highest standard of teaching and learning. And we should not forget that universities are the national institutions and they must keep up national prestige. Success of a university, we all know, would truly depend upon the quality of teachers, students, and staff, and the amount and quality of research that they will produce. University authorities must know that the student is not created for the university, but the university is created for the student. And one thing is very pertinent, which we must know, is that it would be naive to presume that all education is good. Quantitatively, education can be organized to promote social justice or to retard it. Right kind of education on an adequate scale is the one which ensures equality of educational opportunity, and that is what is needed the most. There was a great man, Christopher Whitehead. He said, and I quote, "A progressive society depends upon scholars, discoverers, and inventors," unquote. And universities have the responsibility to produce all the three categories of professionals: scholars who would rediscover past and set before us ideas of wisdom, beauty, and goodness; discoverers who would find out new truths which already existed or learn about them for the first time; inventors, those who would apply existing truth to present needs in a manner that has not existed before. Above all, we need to understand that social and national integration is a precondition for all progress. These are the challenges which the university education must address through their various curricular provisions, which should have futuristic orientation. This is the message that I would like to convey to all of you in this part of my address. Now comes the question before us, how these recent trends and how these expectations of the modern society would be forcing universities of the future, and what future universities would be like. I mean, recent trends in higher education are forcing universities to make necessary structural changes, programmatic changes, and pedagogical changes. They are also forcing universities to give a different orientation to their research programs. The modern societies are expecting universities to prepare workforce which can fulfill the needs of the modern world. Universities are expected to provide more options and greater flexibility in terms of curricular provisions and their modes of delivery, and for which they will have to overhaul their existing infrastructure, and which would require enormous amount of investment. Universities are expected to complement teaching and learning by greater use of the information and communication technological tools, but with the clear understanding that the IC tools cannot replace the universities. Of course, universities are expected to provide more options and greater flexibility in terms of curricular provisions and mode of delivery so that students can freely exercise their options. Unlike in the past, these days students are becoming more fastidious. They are paying greater attention to details on both academic and administrative issues. Students even prefer to construct their own degrees. This is what has already started happening in the Western world for quite some time. Universities thus will, and we have also talked about it in the new national education policy. Universities thus will have to create far more efficient systems for easy and quick redressal of students' academic and administrative needs. They will have to orient teachers to liaison with the students on a regular basis. More and more students now require financial aids because the cost of higher education is increasing in leaps and bounds. Furthermore, because of massification of higher education, more and more number of students would now be coming from disadvantaged sections of the society. So the future universities will have to work out modalities to help these students meet their post-admission financial needs. Students may also like to access foreign degrees through virtual form of mobility without being physically present on offshore campuses. But such students will have to be better communicators and collaborators to fulfill their aspirations of earning a foreign degree, which will require future universities to strengthen the humanities and languages. Future universities will have to restructure their curricula and degree requirements to forge cross-border collaborations. And future universities will have to harness technology as an equalizer between countries. Universities will continually come under pressure to offer more and more market-oriented programs. Universities earlier were not bothering about the placements, but now the buzzword is the placement. And the universities have started taking prides and following all kinds of strategies to portray that the 100% that they are ensuring 100% placement. We'll have to think whether this should be the role of the university system. This will create a challenge for the future universities to sustain programs relating to humanities and social sciences which are of equal value. I'm emphasizing on this point more and more because we are literally mad after the use of the information and communication technology tools actually. undermining the significance of humanities and social sciences. The role of teacher is changing from a specialist to a facilitator and motivator, and it will increase exponentially in the future universities. Future universities will have to focus more on both local and global concerns. They will have to give interdisciplinary orientation to higher education, and they will remain under constant criticism for their disconnect with the world of work. They will have to prepare market-ready workforce. Automation and robotization will continue to put another kind of pressure on the future university system. They will have to focus on artificial intelligence. Future universities will have to help industry build alternate modes of lifestyle, like system for auto-driven cars. They will have to align their vision with the requirements of this fast-changing world. And we all know that the world has been in perpetual transformation ever since the humanity exists. But now the pace of transformation is much faster than ever before. And therefore, under the circumstances, the future universities will have to continually change in the changing landscape of the times. By far, they are the only organizations which are the highest hopes of the society, because they take the society to the next stage of development. If I have to sum it up, I would say that future universities will have to expand the frontier domains of knowledge and widen the human base to enable the youth to realize their fullest potential. Future universities will have to prepare talented workforce needed by the modern world. They will have to create the most inspiring learning and living conditions on their campuses. They will have to engage the students on issues of historical and contemporary significance, so that they can learn from their past, they can neglect the mistakes that have been committed in the past, and look forward for a better civil society. Future universities will have to undertake the most scientific advancements in frontier areas of knowledge, and they will have to ensure that improved academic excellence must become the goal of their every single department. People are going to judge the future universities from three different perspectives that have been barely addressed thus far by most of the universities. One, how far future universities would be able to align their programs with the market. Number two, to what extent would the future universities be successful in creating new knowledge in different areas of study in keeping with the tradition? And third, to what degree future universities would give futuristic orientation to their curricular provision to keep pace with the changing times? These are tough empirical questions that cannot be answered so easily, surely not without research-based evidence, but they are nevertheless the most pertinent questions that would continue to haunt us if we continue to ignore them. The time has come when these long-standing challenges need to be addressed by such approaches that are culturally appropriate, ethically correct, and financially viable. And in a system as diverse as ours, no single approach can possibly be sufficient. An approach which can work on the campus of a particular institution could not be transferred on the other campus. I mean, there are examples. I would like to share with you the example of the University of California at Berkeley. They have got about 7 campuses at different places, but they have not been able to transfer the culture of the main campus to the other campuses. So this is a very big challenge, and which is why I am emphasizing that no single approach can possibly be sufficient, I mean, in as diverse a system as ours. Therefore, the future universities might consider adopting multi-dimensional approach. And some universities can slowly and carefully take one step at a time and begin it in a modest manner. In an educational institution, I'm of the opinion, I'm saying it on the basis of my limited experience, that if the Vice Chancellor can take the university a notch higher or 2 notches higher during his or her tenure of 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, because we have varying tenure of the Vice Chancellors across the states, that should give enough satisfaction to the men and women. Saying that we would bring about Amul Chul Parivartan, it doesn't work in education actually. It might work in other sectors. But insofar as education is concerned, Amul Chul Parivartan is not possible actually. The change is very slow actually. And there are various reasons for that. I need not reflect on those reasons. You know it much more than me. I would like to suggest a 3-dimensional approach for your kind consideration. It may not be possible in a smaller institution. Shall I stop, Faiza? Hello? Hello? Okay, I will continue. I would like to share a 3-dimensional approach before you, which would require 3 competent groups in each department operating in tandem. And I'm talking about a bigger university. I'm not talking about a university wherein you have only 70 faculty or 60 faculty. You have only 2 persons in the department, in a particular department. You do not fulfill even the minimum conditions laid down by the University Grants Commission, that you have 1 professor, 2 associate professor, and 4 assistant professor. I'm talking about a university like Aligarh Muslim University, like Delhi University, Banaras Hindu University, which are larger universities. So a beginning could be made in these universities. And when I'm talking about 3 competent groups in each department working in tandem, what I mean is that the first group should constantly remain in touch with the market and keep aligning their programs in close collaboration with business leaders. Such programs should have a strong component of hands-on training, which may be arranged under the supervision of designated staff members of the related field. It will help universities prepare an industry-ready workforce, which will benefit industry, cut down investment that they have to incur in organizing on-the-job training for newcomers. It should, however, not mean giving universities a complete business or customer orientation, nor it should mean to leave them at the mercy of the market forces, because universities are primarily meant for the advancement of knowledge and not for financial gains. The second group should have a strong commitment to real-life, cognitive scientific research programs in different areas of study, with its implicit philosophical supposition that leads to tangible outcomes in the form of new knowledge, since it is one of the inevitabilities of higher education. The task of this group, though arduous, must be accorded top priority, because that alone reveals the truth and leads to discovery, invention, and innovation, besides freeing humans from the shackles of ignorance. It basically amounts to consistently test the limits of the knowledge. This is the question which I had raised right in the beginning of my address, that we must continue to test the limit of our knowledge excuse me, on our campuses. The third group should give futuristic orientation to the programs of the university. It should constantly design programs which, on the one hand, should create infrastructure and workforce to meet the future requirements of the society, and on the other, save humanity from both man-made and natural catastrophes. Such programs should prepare a workforce which can find solutions for future problems like urban transportation, potable water, food security and safety, green energy, community health, superfast means of communication, etc. This would, of course, require resource allocation, strategic planning, focused attention, talented and committed faculty, and a good student-to-faculty ratio to enable teachers to dedicate more time to undertake research. This is what is missing in most institutions, which is why their desire to compete with the best of the world remains a mere mirage under the prevailing circumstances. All of us want this to happen on the campuses of our institution. And when it comes to writing a policy, developing a policy, or writing a proposal, no one can match us actually. We're very good at it. But when it comes to translating those visions into reality, and when it comes to mobilizing appropriate resources to do that, then we turn a blind eye, and as a result of which, as I said that it remains a mere mirage under the prevailing circumstances. The changing requirements of the global economy need a rethinking of quality of higher education and a policy shift, moving from a haphazard policy to a more reasoned one, commensurate with the scale of context-specific interventions. If you look into the first policy, I would like to leave the first policy of 1913, but I would like to earnestly request you to go through all the earlier policies of 1968, 1986, revised program of action 1992, and the current national education policy of 2020. You would not find much difference in the policy statements. If you look at what is the policy? Policy is a statement of intent actually. When we know what are we lacking and what needs to be done, how come that in the last 76 years we have not been able to fix the issues relating to school education or to higher education? I think the time has come when we must put pressure onto the system to provide adequate resources. And as teachers, we also should tighten our belt and take upon ourselves the responsibility of creating good human beings from our campuses. As teachers, we have the responsibility actually. If anything good happens in the society, the credit goes to the teachers. But if something bad happens to the society, the discredit will also go to the teacher. We should never, ever forget that. So this is what, my dear friends, I wanted to share with you in today's address. If you have some questions, I would love to answer your questions.
Yes.
Insofar as my address is concerned, I have completed it. But I'm very fond of sharing two quotes actually, if you permit me, Faiza.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead, sir. Interesting.
One is from Marie Curie actually. Marie Curie is has been the most outstanding scientist. All of us know that she is the only one who had received 2 Nobel Prizes in 2 different domains of knowledge, one in physics and another in chemistry. And in fact, her family got 5 Nobel Prizes. 2 she got, 1 her husband got, and 1 her daughter Irene got, and 1 her son-in-law also got. So 5 Nobel Prizes in one family. What an illustrious family. When she was receiving her 2nd Nobel Prize, in her acceptance speech, she said, and I quote, "Nothing is to be feared in life. It is only to be understood. And now is the time to learn more so that we can fear less." Unquote. I will stop at it. And now I'm ready to take questions from the...
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Of course, I'm sure this was such an enlightening and invigorating address by Professor Ved Prakash that many participants would certainly be having questions. What I suggest is that if you have any question, please raise your hand first. We would like to avoid any cacophony in the classroom. Of course, our screen is divided into small widgets, but we are no newsroom of the 21st century. So we would not encourage any cross-talking, any talking over each other. So one by one, participants, a few of you are requested to raise your hand.
सर मैं एक क्वेश्चन है
जी एक मिनट हाथ उठाइए पहले प्लीज पहले आई कैन सी दीपक कुमार सिंह जी का हाथ उठा हुआ है दीपक कुमार सिंह जी क्या आप सुन रहे हैं हमें
जी मैम
जी 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 आपका सवाल
जी गुड आफ्टरनून सर
गुड आफ्टरनून
मैं आई एम दीपक सिंह गवर्नमेंट डिजी कॉलेज चुनार मिर्जापुर सर एनएपी 2020 में सॉफ्ट स्किल का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है स्किल डेवलपमेंट में क्योंकि चुनार एक पॉटरी का वो है हब है तो हाउ टू इनकलकेट इन स्किल डेवलपमेंट
आपकी आवाज दीपक जी एक बार फिर से आप अपना सवाल दोहराइए
नहीं मुझे सुनाई दे गया वो सवाल
अच्छा
I have heard it.
जी सॉफ्ट स्किल का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है सर जो सॉफ्ट स्किल का कॉन्सेप्ट है तो चूंकि चुनार एक पॉटरी इंडस्ट्री है तो उसको हम बच्चों में स्किल डेवलपमेंट के कोर्स के थ्रू कैसे इनकलकेट करें हम
This is a challenge before us, but it is a doable proposition provided you bring in people who have the expertise in that vocation. Regardless of their academic qualifications, I think you have to create that kind of mechanism so that these people can come and help students learn those skills. I missed in my address one thing, Professor Deepak, that while we take great care of the prescribed course content, we completely ignore the development of the generic abilities, these soft skills. People are looking for, in the world of work, people are looking for those generic skills like the communication ability, analytic ability, problem-solving abilities, environmental awareness. Those kinds of soft skills. And we presume as teachers, most of us presume that they would automatically develop. We are not taking care of developing those skills by way of creating such activities in our classroom or by way of demonstrating such programs in our classroom that they engage the students and they help the students acquire those kinds of skills and competencies. If you are not going to ask the students to establish relationship between two sets of information, then they would not be able to develop the analytical ability. So this is one of the serious problems, because these soft skills and generic skills, they are not stated explicitly in our curriculum. So the first thing that you will have to do is that you will have to provide adequate space in your prescribed syllabus or syllabi for those skills. And then you will have to demonstrate it. You will have to bring in people, I mean, who can teach them, who can help the students acquire those soft skills. I'll give you an example, actually. I mean, when we were in the college, we were under this impression that the science students need not bother much about the language proficiency. But it turned out to be a big handicap for us. So why is science teacher, a chemistry teacher, does not take upon herself the responsibility of strengthening the language component of her student? That should be the responsibility of each and every teacher, actually. Similarly, creating awareness. I would tell you one thing: we were never ever taught as to why should we study photosynthesis? Why should we study atomic structure? Why should we study molecular rearrangement? Why should I study quadratic equation? I would request all of you, please spend 4 or 5 minutes with a view to creating interest in the minds of the learners. Because learning takes place the best when the learner knows why she should learn it. There are 3 laws of learning. One is the law of force. Another one is the law of readiness. And the third is the law of exercise. I think we should focus on the law of readiness. If you are going to teach about fiscal policy, begin by a statement like this: would you like to become the finance minister of the country? Would you like to be a policy maker? Or would you like to be a chartered accountant? I mean, ask those kinds of, okay, and if they say, yes, I would like to become the finance minister, I would like to become a policy maker, and then you say, all right, then I'm going to introduce you to such a topic through which you can acquire that knowledge. So it would create interest. And please use the social and physical conditions. Our teaching is so very indifferent because we fail to relate the teaching and learning with the social and physical conditions where we exist. So do these 2 things. My answer has become a little longer, but this is what is needed, actually. So focus on the law of readiness. Never ever teach any topic unless you underline the significance of that topic, unless you create the interest. See, why would I acquire new knowledge? I would acquire new knowledge only when I'm motivated, only when I have some burning desire in my belly. So you have to create that burning desire. And this is how the teachers make a lot of difference.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay. Although it was a long answer, but it was very relevant, and I'm sure Deepak ji, you must be satisfied. It must have gone to benefit all participants also. Yes, thank you for your question.
Yes, madam.
Yes, thank you for your question, Deepak ji. We will move on. I can see 4 more raised hands, and we have just about 15 minutes. So I will request the participants to be very brief in their questions. Vijay Gautam ji, I can see your hand raised. Please introduce your request. जी, पहले अपने को introduce कीजिए.
मैं विजय आनंद गौतम, असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर, राजकीय महाविद्यालय मैनपुरी.
मैनपुरी.
जी जी.
ओके.
सब्जेक्ट
वाणिज्य विभाग से हूँ. वाणिज्य विभाग से हूँ.
कौन से विभाग से?
वाणिज्य विभाग सर. कॉमर्स. डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ कॉमर्स. जी मैम, मेरा प्रश्न आपसे है कि मैं ये कह रहा था कि जो सेमिनार प्रेजेंटेशन है वो पर डे भेजना है या एक भेजना है?
विजय जी, इस समय आप केवल वही सवाल करें जो हमारी रिसोर्स पर्सन के लेक्चर से संबंधित है. अन्य सभी सवाल हम आपके बाद में ले लेंगे. मैं तो आपके साथ हूं. हाथ नीचे कर लें विजय जी. जी. डॉक्टर हिमांशु कुमार, if you have a question related to the lecture, please make it and also introduce yourself first. Himanshu Kumar, can you hear me? Himanshu Kumar. Okay, I think I can see he's joined, but चलिए उन्होंने हाथ भी नीचे कर दिया है. Well, so can we go ahead to Dr. Irshad Ahmed?
Hi, ma'am.
Ji
Good
Irshad.
afternoon to all of you.
Good
Actually,
afternoon.
my
Please,
question, I am Dr. Irshad Ahmed from
Ji.
Hooghly Modern College, Department of Urdu, University of Bardhaman. Actually, ma'am, I wanted to ask that what is the three-dimensional approach, what sir has said in his speech, in his address, what is the three-dimensional approach in the universities?
नहीं, वो ऐसा कोई लिखित में कोई अप्रोच. Okay, let me speak in English. There is nothing in black and white. I have given you a suggestion that in a bigger department where we have a large faculty, we can make 3 different groups, because we have the responsibility of relating our programs with the market forces. So and all the 3 groups have to work in tandem. It's not that they will not talk to each other, then and their roles and responsibilities would be altogether different. No. So the first group would continually remain in touch with the market with a view to identifying what kind of skills are required by the market. And they should continually align their programs with the market requirements. The second group should focus on cognitive scientific research with a view to creating new knowledge, because that is one of the inevitabilities of higher education. All right.
Okay,
And the third group should be looking for futuristic orientation. What futuristic orientation shall we provide to our programs? What would be the requirements of the world in 10 years from hence or 15 years from hence? And Professor Irshad, you would be surprised that there are groups working in the Western world which are developing the curriculum that according to them would be required in 20 years from hence or 30 years from hence. And I was interacting with one such group, and they said, I said, how can you visualize the shape of the world in 20 years from hence when there is such a fast change? And they said that even if our predictions turn out to be 25% correct, we would be more than happy for that. So that is what is required from the university system. This would not be possible in a smaller department. It would be possible, which is why I said that universities like Aligarh Muslim University, where we have a large faculty, Delhi University, Banaras Hindu University, I mean, those kinds of Jawaharlal Nehru University, I think we should try it and develop a model so that it can be embraced by other institutions in a phased manner. All universities cannot be research-intensive universities. As I said, that research-intensive universities are very expensive institutions. And in a research university, a professor has to be highly competitive and extremely collaborative. And a research university cannot be driven by considerations other than merit. Meritocracy has to be of prime significance in a research-intensive university. But research university cannot ignore the requirements of the country, isn't it?
okay.
I mean, they should look into the needs of the nation. If we are suffering from the problem of transportation, safe drinking water, community health, green energy, I think the universities owe it to the nation state to undertake those kinds of programs.
Okay, sir.
We must take pride in our national institutions, universities actually. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, I think you are satisfied
Thank you.
with the answer. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
can now see Amreen Fatma. Her hand is raised. Dr. Amreen. Yes. Please introduce yourself first, Dr. Amreen.
Yes, ma'am. I am Amreen Fatima, Assistant Professor, Department of Home Science, Government Girls Degree College, Bagar, Kannauj. So my question is, as we all know, Kannauj is known as Perfume City of India. तो यहाँ पर जो हमारे यहाँ बच्चे आते हैं तो उनके घरों में सर ज्यादातर तो लेबर क्लास के बच्चे आते हैं, पर वो उनके यहाँ पे ये जो परफ्यूम इंडस्ट्री में उनके पेरेंट्स ज्यादातर काम करते हैं। लेकिन जैसे कि एनईपी ने एक वोकेशनल कोर्स इंट्रोड्यूस किया है, तो वोकेशनल कोर्स को भी मैं ही इंडक्ट करती हूँ, अपने यहाँ पे कंडक्ट करती हूँ अपने कॉलेज में। तो सर मेरा एक क्वेश्चन ये है कि जो मुझे प्रॉब्लम आ रही है वोकेशनल कोर्सेज को चलाने में, कि गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने एक फ्रेग्रेंस एंड फ्लेवर डेवलपमेंट सेंटर खोल रखा है वहां पर कन्नौज में, लेकिन हम उनसे टाई अप नहीं कर पा रहे हैं बिकॉज उनकी फीस जो है किसी भी वोकेशनल कोर्स को देने के लिए बहुत ज्यादा है। तो सर क्या कोई ऐसा रास्ता है कि जैसे मैं, मतलब जो मेरा अपना पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू है, मैं ये चाहती हूँ कि जब बच्चे उसी फैमिली से बिलोंग कर रहे हैं जो उनके पेरेंट्स उस कल्चर को ला रहे हैं, तो उस कल्चर को अगर हम एक प्रोफेशन में डेवलप करना चाहें और एनईपी का जो ये वोकेशनल कोर्सेज का जो पॉइंट ऑफ
She lost the connection. I think you lost the connection.
Yes, I think she got disconnected maybe. So we're not able to hear her. We can see her still. So we'll see if she can join. Amreen, Amreen, आपकी आवाज हमें बाद में
I think
सुनाई नहीं
yes ma'am. Hello.
She's
Hello,
back. Yes.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
तो सर मेरा ये क्वेश्चन था कि हम ये जो सेंटर से, गवर्नमेंट का जो सेंटर है, इससे मैं अपने बच्चों के वोकेशनल कोर्सेज को कैसे चला सकती हूँ? Because they are charging lots of heavy fees, sir, 16,000, 17,000 like that.
उसमें देखिए, you have to be a little more innovative. There are sector skill councils actually.
Yep.
There are sector skill councils which are laying down the national occupational standards. NOS. और वो उनको लाइव किया गया था जब when we opened up the provision for the vocationalization of higher education. So I would advise you to get in touch with those sector skill councils which are laying down national occupational standards for different trades.
Yes, sir.
तो आप सेंटर से कनेक्ट होके या यूजीसी से कनेक्ट होके यूजीसी से पता कीजिए कि किस एजेंसी के द्वारा आपको नेशनल ऑक्यूपेशनल स्टैंडर्ड्स की लिस्ट मिल जाए और उस तरीके का प्रोग्राम्स आप चलाइए. यू डोंट हैव टू पे एनीथिंग फॉर दैट, एंड आई थिंक द यूनिवर्सिटी ग्रांट्स कमीशन शुड कम फॉरवर्ड एंड हेल्प यू.
थैंक यू सो मच सर.
ठीक है.
एक वो आजकल NVQEF करके भी
एक वो भी है. अब तो मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एजुकेशन, आई थिंक वी हैव द सेम मिनिस्टर looking after both the ministries.
जी. यहाँ पे भी थोड़ा सा उसमें लेदर टेक्नोलॉजी और इसके कोर्सेज अलीगढ़ में स्टार्ट हुए उसके बाद. Okay, thank you then, Amreen madam. And now we have just 2 more hands raised and no more hands now because we have just another 5 minutes. So Dr. Nirbhaya Singh. Dr. Nirbhaya Singh. जी
यस मैम. मैं निर्भय कुमार सिंह, असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर राजनीति विज्ञान विभाग, VVPG कॉलेज शामली. मेरा मैम हमेशा एक चिंता ये रहता है कि जो कि नई शिक्षा नीति जितनी भी पॉलिसी बनी है वो पॉलिसी बच्चों पे ही तो लागू होनी है. तो चूंकि हमारे कॉलेज में, जैसे मैं अपने कॉलेज का लूँ तो 400 बच्चे पॉलिटिकल साइंस में हैं, लेकिन कॉलेज में मतलब 40% ही, मतलब 40-50 बच्चे ही, 80 लगभग, कभी कभी 40-50 70-80 ऐसे करके ही बच्चे आते हैं. उसमें भी कंटिन्यूटी नहीं रहती है. तो जो 75% जो अटेंडेंस का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है, क्योंकि प्रिंसिपल दबाव बनाते हैं कि आप सबको दिखाइए अटेंडेंस, लेकिन चूंकि आजकल क्रिमिनल जमाना है, कोई मर्डर कर दिया, पता चला कि हम उसका यहाँ पे अटेंडेंस लगा रहे हैं और वहाँ पे वो चोरी कर रहा है. तो मैंने तो साफ मना कर दिया कि जब तक मैं अटेंडेंस उन्हीं का लगाऊंगा जो बच्चे आएंगे, बाकी फिर बाद में आप हम पे दबाव नहीं बनाएंगे कि आप सबको 75% ले जाइए, या तो आप हमको रजिस्टर मत दीजिए. यदि आप रजिस्टर दे रहे हैं तो जो 5 बच्चा आएगा मैं उसी का साइन करके लिखूंगा, नहीं तो मैं नोट में लिख दूंगा कि जो आगे जितनी भी आपको अटेंडेंस बनाई गई है उसमें प्रिंसिपल की सहमति है, मेरा उसमें कुछ नहीं है। तो सबसे बड़ी जो समस्या है कि बच्चे आ नहीं रहे हैं। अब चूंकि पॉलिटिकल साइंस में मैम नई शिक्षा नीति के तहत आपको प्रैक्टिकल सब्जेक्ट भी आए हैं हर सेमेस्टर, मतलब हर ईयर में। तो उसमें मैम हम ये देख रहे हैं कि बच्चे जिसे कर लो दुनिया मुट्ठी में, सबके हाथ में मोबाइल है, लेकिन भारत कब आजाद हुआ ये भी नहीं मालूम है उनको। अब ये बताइए कि 80 नंबर 100 नंबर, मतलब 80 नंबर के 75 नंबर के प्रैक्टिकल में हम इन सवालों पर उनको कैसे पास करें, उनको कैसे हम मतलब आपको खासकर प्राइवेट सेक्टर में आपको देखते हैं कि वो दबाव बनाते हैं कि आप हमारे बच्चों को नंबर दे दीजिए। मैं कहता हूं कि तुम भाई चाहे रिटेन में अगर जिस नंबर लाओगे उतना उसके हिसाब से हम यहाँ दे देंगे तुमको। तो हम पे दबाव बनाते हैं कि प्रैक्टिकल में हम 70% 80%, और सबसे बड़ी बात वो मेरे नाम पे पैसा लेते हैं बच्चों से। तो ये जो एक बड़ी समस्या है, बच्चों मतलब टीचर के नाम पे पैसा लेते हैं, मैं तो उगलवा लेता हूँ बच्चों से तुरंत गुस्सा वो पूछ के। तो ये जो दिक्कत है भारतीय शिक्षा व्यवस्था में, जो नई शिक्षा नीति है, तो ये एक मेजर प्रॉब्लम है और इसके लिए इसकी डीलिंग कोई नहीं करना चाहता है। सरकार नए नए कार्यक्रम आपको मतलब प्राथमिक विद्यालय भी, अब महाविद्यालय जो होंगे वो प्राथमिक विद्यालय हो गए हैं। टीचर मतलब देखे, पुलिस पढ़ाता नहीं है, डॉक्टर पढ़ाता नहीं है, लेकिन टीचर पढ़ाता भी है और प्रशासन का काम देखेगा। टीचर पढ़ाएगा भी और आपको देश का मतलब सुरक्षा भी करेगा। तो ये एक मुझे लगता है कि नई शिक्षा नीति में इन सारे बहुत सारे पहलुओं को बहुत ही बढ़िया तरीके से डील नहीं किया गया है। समस्या जो पहले की शिक्षा नीति में थी वो आज भी बरकरार है। इस पे प्रकाश डालें तो ठीक रहेगा। थैंक यू मैम।
चलिए, बहुत आपने, और मुझे लगता है कि आपके बहुत सारे साथी जो हैं वो आपसे सहमत हैं। बहुत ही लगातार मैसेजेस आ रहे हैं ग्रुप में कि जो आप प्रश्न जी, तो
बिल्कुल सही क्वेश्चन मैम किया इन्होंने।
बिल्कुल सही है मैडम।
सब जगह यही समस्या है मैम।
बहुत से लोगों ने लिख दिया है कि वो
we also face this situation मैडम।
मैम मेरे साथ तो बहुत बड़ी समस्या है।
देखिए कोई नई प्रॉब्लम नहीं, मुझे लगता है बहुत पहले से। सर इसका जवाब देंगे। एवरीवन बी ऑन म्यूट प्लीज। सर क्वेश्चन डायरेक्टेड टू द राइट पर्सन।
मैंने जो 4-5 क्राइसिस की बात की थी, वी हैव ए क्राइसिस ऑफ लीडरशिप, we have a crisis of identity. That is very unfortunate. If you go into the policy, you would find that the policy has talked about the establishment of the board of governors. तो निर्भय सिंह, आप वहाँ शामली में एक बोर्ड ऑफ गवर्नर्स जल्दी से एस्टेब्लिश कराओ, और बोर्ड ऑफ गवर्नर्स को जिम्मेदारी दी गई है कि दे विल लुक इनटू ईच एंड एवरी एस्पेक्ट insofar as governance of the institution is concerned, including the appointment of the head of the institution. और वही उसका एक समाधान है। ये सामाजिक समस्याएं हैं, कुरीतियां हैं, इनको हम सब लोग मिलकर ही दूर कर सकते हैं। और मेरे पास तो इस चीज का कोई समाधान है नहीं कि भाई बच्चे आते नहीं है, बच्चे क्यों नहीं आते हैं। इफ आवर टीचिंग इज सो इंटरेस्टिंग, मैंने तो ऐसे भी टीचर्स देखे हैं जिनकी क्लासेस में बैठने की जगह नहीं मिलती। अब आपका कौन सा कॉलेज है और उस कॉलेज में किस तरीके का काम है कि भाई 800 बच्चे एनरोल्ड हैं और सिर्फ 80 ही बच्चे आते हैं।
सर जैसे क्या है ना सर, कि जैसे जो पढ़ने की, जैसे मैं बताऊं कि जिन बच्चों को ये नहीं मालूम है कि भारत कब आजाद हुआ, ऐसे बच्चों को आप रेशनली बहुत ज्यादा आप तो उनको कर ही नहीं सकते हैं। उनका एक छोटा सा मोटो है, वो आएंगे घूमें।
यूनिवर्सिटी में 100% अटेंडेंस रहती है
सर मैं बनारस हिंदू यूनिवर्सिटी में पढ़ाया हूँ, वहाँ पे बच्चे अपना रेगुलर आते हैं, खूब पढ़ते हैं, 80-90 की क्लास रहती है, यहाँ पे भी रहती है। लेकिन मैं ऑल ओवर जो आपको जो बताया हूँ, मैं उसका मैं एक कॉलेज की समस्या नहीं है, पूरे भारत की समस्या है। मध्य प्रदेश में भी हमारे दोस्त इसी तरह से बोलते हैं। तो ये पूरे भारत की समस्या है, ऐसा नहीं है कि और आपको टीचर का।
भाई निर्भय सिंह होल्ड ऑन
सर, ये समस्या तब से ज्यादा बनी हुई है जब से फेल ना करने की नीति आई है।
सर को जवाब दीजिए, वैसे भी समय हो गया है जी।
मेरे पास इस समस्या,
म्यूट प्लीज जी सर।
मेरे पास इस समस्या का कोई समाधान नहीं है, कोई समाधान नहीं है। लेकिन मैंने आपसे एक बात कही और मैं उसको रिपीट कर देता हूं कि भाई एनीथिंग if anything wrong happens in the society, the discredit goes to the teachers. ये कलेक्टिव रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है।
नहीं ऑनलाइन हुआ का
इसमें हेड ऑफ द इंस्टीट्यूशन को अलग से करके हम नहीं देख सकते, अपने को अलग से करके हम नहीं देख सकते। इसके लिए तो जरूरी है कि हम लोगों को एक तरीके की मुहिम चलानी चाहिए। वी मस्ट क्रिएट अवेयरनेस अमंग्स द पेरेंट्स, अमंग्स द चिल्ड्रन कि भाई ये तुम्हारी लाइफ का प्राइम टाइम है। इस प्राइम टाइम में इफ यू आर नॉट गोइंग टू एंगेज योरसेल्फ इन न्यू लर्निंग, आप सीखोगे नहीं तो दिस इज गोइंग टू बी डिसास्ट्रस फॉर यू। अगर किसी को आप समझाएं उसके भविष्य के बारे में तो मुझे नहीं लगता कि वो बच्चा समझेगा नहीं है। हम लोगों की टेंडेंसी अक्सर ये होती है कि वी ट्राई टू गिव अप whenever we find some difficulty, when we face some difficulty. I think we should not give up. अगर आप वहाँ पर 10 टीचर्स हैं और 10 टीचर्स इकट्ठे होके आप इस चीज को इंश्योर करें कि वी वुड लाइक आवर कॉलेज टू बी नंबर 1 इन दिस सिटी, और वो नंबर 1 बनाने के लिए हमें क्या क्या करने की आवश्यकता है, और आप कम्युनिटी के साथ में एंगेजमेंट करें, मैनेजमेंट के साथ एंगेजमेंट करें, तो लोगों की समझ में वो बात आएगी और लोग आपको कोऑपरेट करेंगे। देखिए, हर आदमी चाहता है कि वो अच्छा जीवन जिए, हर आदमी को सुरक्षा की आवश्यकता है। बच्चे जो हैं व्हेन दे आर सेल्फ सफिशिएंट, तो दैट इज अवर प्रॉस्पेरिटी एक्चुअली। और वो जब आकर आपके पैर छूते हैं या आपको नमस्ते करते हैं, मैं तो पैर छूने में विश्वास नहीं करता हूँ, जब आपको आके नमस्ते करते हैं, आपको रिगार्ड पे करते हैं, तो वो एक बहुत जबरदस्त ग्रेटिट्यूड है। तो हम लोगों को समझाने का ही प्रयास करना चाहिए ऐसी स्थिति में। दिस इज वेरी अनफॉर्चुनेट कि बच्चों को ये मालूम नहीं है कि भाई आज़ादी हमें कब मिली थी। ये तो आजकल बड़ी एक डिबेट टीवी मीडिया पर मैं भी देखता हूँ, मैंने तो अखबार पढ़ना ही बंद कर दिया। कुछ लोग कहते हैं कि बड़े बड़े पत्रकार अपनी अलग अलग टिप्पणी करते हैं, बड़े बड़े जो सेलिब्रिटीज हैं उनकी सोच अलग अलग है, विच इज वेरी अनफॉर्चुनेट। मैंने आपको जो एम्स ऑफ यूनिवर्सिटी एजुकेशन की बात की है, आई वुड लाइक यू टू रिविजिट द यूनिवर्सिटी एजुकेशन कमीशन। बहुत सारी समस्याओं का समाधान आपको वहां से मिलेगा। हमारी दिक्कत ये है कि हम लोग पढ़ते नहीं हैं। मेरी आप इतनी रिक्वेस्ट मान लें, पता नहीं शामली वाले लड़के का क्या नाम था, मैं तो भूल गया उसका, निर्भय सिंह, मेरी एक सलाह आप ये मान लें, ये आप 3 डॉक्यूमेंट्स पढ़ें और अपने क्या कहेंगे, आपके जो को टीचर्स हैं आपके साथ में, उनको भी ये सलाह दें कि यूनिवर्सिटी एजुकेशन कमीशन की पूरी रिपोर्ट पढ़ें, कोठारी कमीशन की पूरी रिपोर्ट पढ़ें, मुदालियत कमीशन की। एक तो ये रिपोर्ट्स पढ़ने से आपकी भाषा बेहतर हो जाएगी, दिस आई कैन अश्योर यू। दूसरा, आपको ये पता चलेगा कि उसमें अध्यापक का क्या रोल है, समाज का क्या रोल है, गवर्नेंस का मतलब क्या है। और तीसरा, इन समस्याओं के हम लोगों को इन समस्याओं से जूझने के लिए उनमें से रास्ते भी निकल कर आते हैं। वो दे आर वंडरफुल डॉक्यूमेंट्स, ऑल द 3 विच आई रेफर टू यू। तो ऐसा नहीं है, मतलब देखिए, हमारे मुल्क में बेहतरीन इंस्टीट्यूशंस भी हैं, ऐसा नहीं कह सकते हम। अब आई टेक द नेम ऑफ इंडियन इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ साइंस बेंगलोर विद अ ग्रेट प्राइड। I talk about the Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology with great pride. I talk about the Central University Hyderabad with great pride, Jawaharlal Nehru University with great pride, Aligarh Muslim University, BHU। लेकिन ये संख्या कम है और इन जगहों में उस तरीके की परेशानियां नहीं है। परेशानियां जिस तरीके की आप बता रहे हैं वो छोटे कस्बों में इस तरीके की समस्याएं हमारे पास में हैं, जहां अध्यापकों की संख्या भी कम है और स्टूडेंट्स ज़्यादा एनरोल्ड होते हैं। तो लेकिन हमें प्रयास ये करना चाहिए कि जिन संस्थाओं के मैंने नाम लिए उनको हम किस तरीके से मल्टीप्लाई कर सकते हैं। अगर हम बनारस हिंदू यूनिवर्सिटी खड़ी कर सकते हैं और वहाँ एक अच्छी कल्चर डेवलप कर सकते हैं, अलीगढ़ में वो कल्चर डेवलप कर सकते हैं, हैदराबाद में वो कल्चर डेवलप कर सकते हैं, तो दैट कैन बी डेवलप इन अदर प्लेसेस ऑल्सो, नॉट इन 1:1 की रेशियो में तो कभी होता नहीं है। मैंने आपको यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ कैलिफोर्निया एट बर्कली का एग्जांपल दिया कि दे हैव नॉट बीन एबल टू ट्रांसफर द कल्चर ऑफ द मेन कैंपस टू देयर ऑफ कैंपसेस, बट दैट डज नॉट मीन that their Irvine campus is a poor campus, or their Davis campus is a poor campus, or their LA campus is a poor campus. नहीं, वो मैं दूसरे संदर्भ में आपसे बात की है कि जो कल्चर है वहाँ की, I mean a place where 35 Nobel laureates were working at a time as faculty members. Look at the culture of that institution. So we need to learn, I mean, from the places where we are able to impart good education, from where we are able to churn out very outstanding scientists, very outstanding civil servants, very outstanding surgeons in this country. We must take pride. हमारे पास अच्छी संस्थाएं हैं, उनकी संख्या कम है, उनको बढ़ाने की आवश्यकता है, और वो बढ़ाई जा सकती हैं with our commitment, with the cooperation of the community, and with the support from the dispensation. और उसमें कभी आपको 100% हर समुदाय से नहीं मिलेगा, लेकिन अगर आप कॉन्शियसली मोबिलाइज करेंगे अपने रिसोर्सेज, तो कहीं से आपको 70% सपोर्ट मिलेगी, कहीं से 50% मिलेगी, कहीं से 40% मिलेगी, तो उसका रिजल्ट थोड़ा अच्छा ही होगा। शामली में कौन सा कॉलेज है मुझे नाम बताना, मैं तो बाजू का ही रहने वाला हूँ, अगर कभी मुझे मौका मिला तो आई वुड लाइक टू विजिट योर कॉलेज and talk to your principal and talk to your management there.
सर वेस्ट डिग्री कॉलेज है, वीवीपीजी कॉलेज 1957 का बना है।
शामली में है
जी सर।
प्रॉपर सिटी में है, अच्छा ठीक है
जी सर, माजरा रोड।
ठीक है, राइट। सो मैं आई वुड लाइक टू से गुड बाय टू ऑल ऑफ यू, एंड बट बिफोर दैट आई विश यू ऑल द वेरी बेस्ट एंड ग्रेट गुड लक। You are in
Thank
India.
you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
हमारा हमारा जो प्रोफेशन है वो सबसे बेहतरीन प्रोफेशन,
Thank you.
और
Thank you, sir.
we must be very proud of